everybody, what's going on? TJ here from Midlife Karting Crisis. We are back at it, getting the shifter put back together for our August event and our July test days. So let's take a look, see where we're at today. All right, friends, as you may recall, our issue was our rear brake caliper here had a piston that had seized, meaning it just quit moving. So as this pad kept advancing that direction under braking, it just wouldn't return to where it was actually sliding the caliper over on the axle, and eventually creating a bind. And if you look right here, you can see where we've had to grind off the slag from where the disc, the brake disc, turn this up where you can see it's hard to do with one hand, actually was rubbing this off into a big pile of just steel. So I don't know what you'd call that process. I guess lapping, for lack of a better term. It lapped all that right off there. But anyway, we've got that fixed. Greg Wright Rapid Racing rebuilt the calipers for us. Not a particularly difficult endeavor, but very inexpensive way for sure for you to ensure that your brake's going to work right each year. Simply, one thing happens really is you're replacing these O-rings, and I've got a bunch of them here. So we're good to go here. We should have brakes. Pretty much ran all last year, which is front brakes, which are the year before actually, so not particularly great. But we got this fixed, so the next job is to put those in. Now over here, we have our one of our axle bearings. This was the bearing that sat right beside and behind the brake caliper, or behind the brake caliper and beside the brake disc. And I hope you can hear this, but we'll see if you can. I know it's pretty noisy out here with the fan and the traffic and all, but can't really hear it so good. But this is a very crunchy bearing, so we're going to replace it with this brand new one here. Bearings are only $20. Again, just a super inexpensive way to ensure that that you got the best possible chance being successful by replacing your bearings each season. To redo the whole axle, you'd be looking at, $30 or so. So check this out. All right, so we have our bearing cassette, which is this piece here, and of course our new bearing. Now, if you look at this, you'll see there's a relieved area right here and another one right up here. This allows this bearing to fall into place, and then simply by twisting it this way, it'll fall into the carrier. Now, here's where you run into. This is a very tight fit. As you can see, this is designed so this doesn't pop in this way. If it did, it would come out just as easily. So, first thing you want to do is you want to go through here, rub your finger in. You're looking for any burr or any obstruction, anything that might stop that from wanting to fall through. And this one feels pretty good. Always want to go through here, you clean it real good, make sure you get all the grease, the grime, the grit, anything of that nature. But I've run this through the parts washer, soaked it real good, cleaned it off real good. But what I found, this is still a bit of a tight fit. The last thing you want to do is to hit this bearing with a hammer, a mallet, or anything like that, because that is just setting yourself up for some potential damage. So I'm going to show you an old tool and die maker's trick I learned back in that business a few years back. Check this out. All right, as you saw a second ago, this is a pretty tight fit. We're talking about a difference of only maybe 3 or 4 thousandths of an inch, that this hole here is bigger than the bearing I'm trying to put in it. So what I'm going to do, this is aluminum. Aluminum conducts heat very, very well. So I'm going to sit this out here in the sunshine and allow that to warm up. Now it's in the lower 80s today, so in direct sunshine, that should get up well over 90 degrees. My goal is just to allow that metal to expand just a touch, just a couple thousandths of an inch to make that bearing slide in a little easier, but that's not all. All right, for step 2 is not opening a beer, not yet, but I am going to take the bearing here and I'm going to sit this in my beer cooler with the idea of getting that to cool off a little bit. And what happens when steel gets cold? Well, it's going to contract. It's going to get a little smaller. My goal, maybe a thousandth of an inch contraction on that, if that much. Not much, just enough to allow that to slide in a little more easily. And then when everything rewarms back up to whatever the ambient temperature is, I'll have the nice, tight, perfect fit on the barrier and the cassette, and I will not have had to hit it with a mallet or anything like that. Not sure how well this is going to show up, but right here is where the bearing we're replacing set on the axle. And if you can see that little line right there, there's a little tiny lip that's developed there. And it's probably just from the pressure of that bearing being moved side to side, since it does hold the brake caliper as this disc was floating back and forth with our braking issue. So one of the things I want to do is I've got to get that off there. I can't have that little rise, that high spot. So rather than take a file or a grinder, anything that could put a scar on there, I'm simply going to take a wire brush drill attachment and just knock that down off there so that's nice and smooth. That'll go a long way in helping us get our bearing back on there when we go to reassemble the rear end. There you can kind of see that line a little bit. It's a lot better. I'm going to continue to work on this. Again, my goal is to just get this as smooth as it is over here so our bearing will slide on and off much, much easier. Well, gang, after cleaning this off a little bit, these other two bearings, just kind of getting some of the grunge and everything off of them, listen to this. Yeah, that's not good. Let me do it again. Yeah, that's not good. We're just going to go ahead. This one's almost as bad. They're not spinning. We're just going to go ahead and replace those as well. All right, gang, so here's where we are at as we wrap up today's activities. The goal was to get the rear axle reinstalled with the brake caliper on it and the lines all hooked in and everything good to go. However, after cleaning up the other two cassettes and the bearings, gave those a really good listen, and well, I'll let you guys decide. Try to wait till the traffic backs down out there on the road. Here, listen to this. That to me just does not sound like a good bearing. Again, there was a big, actually a couple of off tracks where I dropped a wheel or two at the last race we're at, and there was a tremendous amount of sand at the racetrack, and I just think that probably got in there and trashed those bearings. So here's what a fresh one sounds like. Hear that? Yeah, me either. So this versus the fact that I can hear those bearings wobbling around in there tells me there's no grease, and I'm not saying it's impossible. Road racers will actually bake the grease out of these and just continually pump them full of tri-flow. We can't do that at road racing. We're just, our races are too long, and we are spinning these things considerably faster than they are on the sprint track. So we're going to go ahead and replace these two other bearings. That'll give us 3 fresh bearings on the rear axle, which again, at 22 or 23 bucks per bearing, it's a very cheap insurance policy, because I mean, all this you hear, that's friction, that's drag, and that is power that's not going from your engine to the racetrack. So we'll get this replaced, and we will pick this up again tomorrow. It has been a couple of days since the last clip I've shot. Been super busy, not only with this, but with another opportunity in motorsports that's kind of come along, and I'll be sharing that with you here very soon. But just want to kind of give you an update on the progress on the kart here. We're going to try and get a video up every day. Obviously that didn't work out, but we're going to be doing a lot more. So that's a delay. That's why the big time jump. That's why I'm dressed differently, and that's kind of what's going on. So check this out. Here's what I've got done so far. All right, as you can see, the rear axle with 3, count them, 3 new bearings has been installed. Our brake pads, rotors, calipers, all in place and clean. The cassettes have been cleaned. The housing or the holders here for the cassettes clean, and actually getting the motor put back together. This is our freshly cleaned and re-oiled air filter, reinstalled. Only thing missing right now is the exhaust, and that is because the exhaust is hanging up over here because for the first time, decided to paint our exhaust. Now typically these are left in their unfinished metal condition. Very loud trucks going by outside, sorry about that. But problem is, thing rusts every time you run it. Literally, every time you run it, it cools off. The condensation causes some surface rust on there. So I went out and bought some high temperature black paint, and hopefully this will not only look a little nicer, but also just be one less thing to have to remember to do at the end of each day, and that's hose down the exhaust can there with metal protected so it doesn't rust. So that's all finished up as well. The other thing I did, in addition to changing out this steering wheel, which is a steering wheel I bought a couple of years ago for a different kart, and I just absolutely love it, I added this angled spacer. As you can see, what that's done is that's tilted the steering wheel back towards me a little bit, which means the top of the steering wheel is a little closer and it makes for a little more ergonomically correct steering wheel position, you know, for your hands and your arms and what have you. Only thing we're missing on here is, since this is so much taller, the distance between the bottom of the hole and the top of the hole where this goes in is so much longer, I don't have a bolt that's the right size that'll fit that'll allow me to put the small safety clip on there. That clip on there is just a fail-safe measure in case that nut would work itself loose. You've got one more layer of protection on. So that's all finished up. Front brake calipers reinstalled. The other thing I did is took a wire brush and cleaned off the bleeder valves, because those were just showing some signs of, you know, just some, anytime you get brake fluid on something, it's pretty corrosive, and it just started to, you know, pit the threads, and of course a little bit of that bleeds out every time you bleed the brakes. So we just took a wire brush and really cleaned those up real good. That should make for easier bleeding of the brakes, simply because you won't have rust and all that other stuff stuck down in the threads causing issues. So at this point, really what we got to do to get the braking system finished up is simply, there's a little bit of fluid left in here. We'll get that cleaned out real good, show you how we do that, and refill those and pump up and bleed the brakes. That'll be finished up. After that, we need to finish cleaning the radiator. There's still a little bit of grass. I'm telling you what, kids, this stuff right here is so hard to get it all out. But we'll get it all out, and then we will refill this with our distilled water and AMSOIL coolant boost. That is a substance that is legal. You can't run antifreeze in these for a multitude of reasons, but you can use a water booster. Simply what that does is that breaks the surface tension in the water and allows it to exchange heat a little more efficiently. So we'll be doing that. Then we'll put a gear back on here. We're not gonna put a road racing gear on. We're going to put a sprint kart track, so we can take this out to Newcastle Motorsports Park and break the motor in. Of course, the hubs, those will go back on, wheels and tires and all that good stuff. But we are probably, I'm saying within probably 6 hours or so of labor of being ready to put this thing back on the racetrack. Oh, and of course, our tack. We'll put our tack temp gauge back on here. We got a new exhaust gas temperature lead. That'll go on. So today, I look to get the exhaust put back on, get that all finished up. I do not have any brake fluid on hand, so I'm gonna order some AMSOIL brake fluid. I've got some for passenger cars over here. And once we're done with that, it's simply a matter of doing a nut and bolt check, filling the water system up, and then we'll be ready to start this and do the stand break-in. Of course, the only thing we gotta do after that, of course, we gotta get all these old graphics off. And they're just, you know, a lot of guys run these, and I get it. You know, anywhere from $200 to $500 a pop for a complete new graphics package. I get it if you know your budget's on the tight side, and that's $500 or $300 you can spend on something else that's going to make you go faster, so you don't do your graphics. I totally get that. However, we are going to go ahead and do that. I will be replacing my Ric Flair silhouette. Woo! Gotta have the Nature Boy, baby. Gotta have the Nature Boy, and I will be saving that too. So that was pretty cool to win a shifter kart road race in my first year of trying. That was pretty special. So I'll be saving that sticker, and I'll be making the trip to the next kart. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at right now. And next time you see us, hopefully we'll be finishing up those brakes, putting some water in that system, and firing the motor up. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. And as always, ring that notification bell. And last but not least, share this video with anyone you think that might enjoy it or get some knowledge out of it. Once again, TJ here from Midlife Karting Crisis, and we'll talk to you soon.